Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity. You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search, focus that fire. And so we come together. Join us. Join the discussion. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat. Welcome back for episode 170 of Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on May 31st over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Our topic for tonight's episode is going to be a look at the Symmetry. But first, let's run through a quick introduction for those, or of those on the show for tonight. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86. Forgive me, apparently my week has been harder than I thought, and I am finding it problematic to English. Next up, we have our own master of social media, the one and only Green-Eyed Music Lover. Green, I hope you're doing well, and hopefully you can communicate a little bit clearer than I can. How has the week treated you so far?
I have in my hand a dry dock sour apricot blonde ale brewed with apricot puree. It's been one of those weeks.
That was a mouthful of a drink. Is all I'm still processing the first half of the words that were said.
The company is Dry Dock. They have a drink that is called Sour Apricot, and it is a blonde ale brewed with apricot puree. It's kind of almost a sour, as if you're talking about types of beverages, but it's not quite a sour.
Okay.
It's been a long week.
Okay,
we'll
makes
just shorten
sense.
it to that. There we go.
Well, we have also joining us in the hot seat as guest co-host, we have our good friend Wykid. Wykid, how are you doing? Or WykidJestr, I guess technically. How are you doing this week?
Been having a pretty good week. Yeah, apparently I'm going to be speaking just as well as you are.
I think it's get the feeling that it's a common ailment this week,
right? But yeah, it's been a great week. I got a lot of good grinding in, prepping for the raid drop and the new content release. Been hanging out with some great people at work, some wonderful people on Discord, and getting some clan mates through their triumphs. We're trying to.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
We were trying to carry Dwyer through to his Dredgen title tonight, and what he needs left is the ghost shell and the triumph where somebody in the party carries I call it the pack mule triumph. They literally get 75 motes in a single gambit match without dying.
Oh my god.
So you basically turn Cole Hoover mode and
we make Cole do it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess that's
all just take Cole for. So that's essentially what happens. And
we turn Cole on it.
Right. Because she's the exo with the most. She's got the vacuum.
She's the exo with the most.
I mean, there's other things I could say that are not okay for this chat. But we actually did it on the very last match we played tonight, but Dwyer's internet connection kind of took a dump, and he got disconnected just as we were going to the final screen. Yeah, so he did not get the credit for it.
Oh no!
Like, he survived the entire thing. Like, we did the whole thing. It was great. Cole had like 80 motes. Dwyer got kicked, and it's like,
Roomba God. Cole strikes again.
Yeah, Roomba. I mean, she is a Roomba. If you ever watch her play Gambit, what we end up doing is we just go through and shoot everything for her, and she doesn't really fire at anything. She just runs around and picks stuff up.
You just hear this like hum behind you. It's like, what is it? Don't worry, it's just cold. Just keep going.
It's just a vacuum hum.
That Forrest Gump emote that you always see, where he's just taking off around the corner. That's pretty much Cole and a Gambit.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But like as soon as the alert happens when an invader pops in, you just see her scatter. She just clams up real hard. It's like, nope, I'm out.
I don't blame her. That's very similar to me. Oh my god!
But yeah, it's been an interesting week. How about your week, Blue?
Oh, my week. So, fun fact with working in financial industries is banking holidays it's like you'd think they would make weeks easier, but for some reason,
nope.
4-day weeks are always worse than full-day weeks. I don't know why it is. It's like karma. It's like
you got to cram more work in.
Yeah, it's like it's not even that. It's like when we get back for a 4-day week, they're like, okay, we missed one day, so we have to make it up and do extra. So it's like, why are we trying to do 6 days worth of work in 4 days when we don't normally even try to do 5 days worth of work in 5 days? Like, this doesn't make sense, guys. But like I'm like, and it's not like unique to any particular thing, because if you talk to anybody who has like federal holidays, that's like the number one complaint. Like it's so funny that's this weird mentality switch. But real quick, Wicked, I really wanted to actually kind of give you a couple minutes to kind of walk through, like, where can we find you? You know, do you have any favorite lore in Destiny, and what kind of got you into the lore of Destiny? I know we kind of talked about this a little bit in the top 3 that will be coming out. Yeah. We just recorded, but will be coming out after. But just for those who might not have a chance to listen to that.
Yeah. As far as where you can find me, I'm on Twitter, Twitch, PlayStation, and Xbox. WykidJestr, WykidJestr. Pretty much you can find me on there. Hit me up. I try to be as available as possible, especially for helping out with individuals. I've actually got one carry that I need to help with as far as the 0 hour. Just to get him through the mission, and we're waiting for his PlayStation Network to get back up. But yeah, hit me up, send me a message. I try to get back with everybody as quickly as possible. So it's really friendly, really easygoing. Try to be anyway. Just don't mention the FedEx hero.
There you go. Yep. So the other place you can find him is a lot of the times if I'm streaming, or if he's streaming, even because he has his own stream as well. We're both in Hydra. Wicked is one of my clanmates. So
yes, I am.
Yep. So if anybody in Hydra is streaming, most likely Wicked and I are going to be there in some shape or form, whether or not we're just in chat or we're actually gaming with them.
We're just trying to be obnoxiously distracting.
Yes, that is 90% of our job in the clan is just either wrecking your face in Crucible, or just being utterly distracting where you can't breathe and you're snorting.
Super. Chat is letting me to inform people that it is super not PG.
No, it is not PG at all. If you were a small child, do not come into our streams, mine included, because I am generally not as PG during streams as I am during the show. I can be if I need to be, but it's mature audiences.
I have a muzzle on me right now, so that my maturity is being kept in check. So
I may have threatened them.
A little bit.
But what about so for lore though, do you have a lot of people have favorites. What's your favorite story?
So Green probably knows this because it ties back into our RP days and the way we met. My personal favorite is the Shin Mao first storyline. I've been a huge fan of it since D1. Literally the minute the last word came out and the lore about it came out, I've just been poring over it and analyzing it. And that was one of the things that I always talked to about with Green was as far as the whole shootout between Jaren Ward and Dredgen Yor versus Shin Mao Fur and Dredgen Yor. The fact that he didn't raise his gun, or it's never mentioned that he raised his gun, and yet he had all this experience. Jaren was, faster draw. He never missed. That it was just way too much coincidence. That there had to have been a purpose why he didn't draw it, not just Shin Malphur's better than him.
And lo and behold.
Yep, lo and behold, here it is. I still have my own theories on it, and most of them are more than likely spin foil as far as where the rest of that story can go. I'm really glad that the writers took it that direction, and gave the man with the golden gun a lot more depth to his character. Gave him, I don't want to say a more sinister purpose, but a darkness to him that makes him a little bit more appealing and relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Where the common sense kind of comes in instead of just making him this zealot. Would probably be one of the closest things to say to it.
Yeah.
Well, just one-sided, one dimension.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Wicked is actually cosplaying as Shin at GuardianCon this year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm
putting together a nice little concept.
Yeah, and if you run into him in Crucible, just be prepared. He likes to actually almost run. If he's running his hunter, he's going to be running last word. So
always.
He's good with it. Let's just say that. He annoys the piss out of me with it, to be honest, because I'm a shotgunner, so he shuts me down most of the time. It's very annoying.
Well, it took me a while to get to that point where I could shut down your shotgun because you like to be sneaky.
Most of the time.
Yeah, she likes to stay off radar.
No.
And then come swooping from above like a hawk. Anyway. Man.
Yeah,
but
so that's my favorite one.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Green, I know you had I see you filling in the question, so I know you had a question.
It was kind of a last minute question, but Twitter has been very on top of it lately. This question has been out a grand total of 3 hours.
Like literally last minute.
It was really, I was bad this week. This is why I'm drinking a beer. This week's question was, do you believe we need the dark as well as the light to finally rise above our struggles? It's a very kind of open-ended question, and I kind of wanted to see if the community would bite, essentially, as far as would they go on to explain their information or what their thoughts on it. And we had, surprisingly, like I said, Twitter's been on top of it tonight. We had not only 75 votes so far, which is awesome as far as yes and no, but we also had quite a few comments underneath. And so 75% of people said that yes, we need to be able to utilize both sides of the coin, essentially, and 25% said no. And then we had a few different people, including Sagasite, who said light and dark are two sides of the same coin. Both are powerful. If we harness the darkness as we do the light, who knows what we could achieve. And there's a lot of basically that same feeling. Angel said the same thing. Lux said darkness is just the absence of light, just like how cold is the absence of heat. It's something that we define even though it doesn't truly exist. In Destiny, I don't know. Technically, we don't have the quote unquote darkness anymore. In some ways,
it's not.
In some ways,
in some ways,
it's not defined. It's not defined as the darkness anymore. But it's interesting to see that perspective, and I'm curious what if you guys had anything to say about that, as relating it back to real life physics and how heat and coldness are basically one is the absence of the other. Do we think that the darkness in some ways could be the absence of light within a character or within a creature, or that by embracing the darker side that we are limiting our light or having less light?
Wicked?
Blue or wicked?
I don't know. This kind of ties in with that whole thing that I brought up to you earlier about the other side comment. The first, as far as the whole thing about the heat and cold, it's not even so much an absence of it as the only reason that we understand it is because we have the other. And this is what this whole thing about the symmetry is tied around. We know that there's heat because we have felt cold, and we we know there is cold because we have had heat. So they exist because the other exists. So that, and as far as the whole thing with the light and the dark and us needing both, I think there are aspects to it in the game, and as far as just in life in general, where once you start looking at how you are maintaining, how society is being held up, and like a good example that I like to look at is Batman. Again, going back to the whole comics thing, the whole hero we need but we don't deserve, and hero we deserve but don't need, where there's that line that you can't cross if you want to stay on one side, but in order to serve the other side, you have to cross the line.
Punisher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Punisher's another one that works that way.
The anti-hero concept.
Mm-hmm.
The anti-hero concept, the idea that we can't beat the darkness without using the darkness is one that I'm still kind of working through on my own as far as whether or not I agree with that concept.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree. Me personally, I would definitely be a symmetrist if I were a guardian, as far as just both in game and in life, finding a balance between, being a good guy and being a bad guy. There's good things and bad things to do that kind of balance your life out. Particularly being in the military, I kind of relate to that whole balance because there's aspects of our job that's not pretty.
Mm-hmm.
There's things that we have to be prepared to do. It doesn't mean that we have to be bad people, and it doesn't mean we have to do evil things or believe in doing evil things or like it. But sometimes bad things happen to people, and sometimes it's to serve a better good, a greater good. And it just comes down to whether or not you're willing to accept the price on yourself or accept the price on other people for those actions, and whether or not you can live with yourself for it. And I think that's what ultimately, as far as especially in Destiny and in life, it comes down to when it comes to making these kind of decisions with how to balance it. So I don't know if that quite answered what you were going for, but
No, I mean, I think it's a good kind of introduction and segue into what we're going to be talking about later, and how the symmetrists the symmetry, technically, I guess it's just one. Would you call them the symmetrist if in plural? Anyway.
Well, the followers I would refer to as symmetrists, but there is only the symmetry because it's referring to, and I think that's, I mean, I agree, really, I actually agree with Wicked. I would argue from, it depends on what your definition of the darkness, when you say that, is that a physical manifestation of energy, or is that a moral manifestation of intent? Because given your definition, then that's going to very drastically change my answer. Because as far as the physical component of the concept of light as power or light as life force, yes, I think that harnessing darkness would just be a natural progression, evolution, whatever you want to call it. But if you're talking about like a moral component, then I think I would actually kind of double down on the fact that if you are to say that you are going to embrace darkness, then you are not actually defeating darkness, you're furthering darkness.
But if you're working on balancing the two out, because right now we have
from a moral standpoint, though, it's not. You can't take a moral high road and then say that you're going to subject yourself to the low road at the same time.
It's not taking a moral high road, though, necessarily. Because you're not taking a moral high road to defeat something per se, right? To defeat something is not a morally just thing in and of itself. But if you are, and I know we're going to talk about this as we get further into it, but I might as well kind of dive into it a bit now. If you have a certain amount of light and dark in the universe, and it becomes out of balance, one becomes more than the other. The whole thought behind the symmetry is that the scales must balance themselves somehow. So if the light becomes too powerful, the dark shows up more. Ironically, it's one of those things where power attracts power kind of thing in game. But the other thing you can think about the other thing you can think about, though, is if you take on utilizing the dark within yourself and finding a balance within yourself. You're taking from both sides and managing it within a single entity rather than having a strict one side and a strict other side. And granted, every creature in Destiny has a mixture of two, except for a few races. Obviously, those races are purely one or the other. One race is purely one.
I would argue that's maybe not true, though.
Taken? The Taken?
Well, but we have seen Taken with Independence. And it's not.
But that doesn't.
So the fact
light,
I get.
though.
Well, and see, this is where I think again
all light is connected.
Yeah, and I think that's again. This goes back to what do you mean by light?
Right.
Because like for me, I view light in akin to a philosophical concept such as anima. It's a animating force. It's not a moral thing. So for me, the concept of a guardian dealing in darkness, if you're talking about the power component, it makes perfect sense. I think the confusion that a lot of times happens is that we confuse the terms light with there's two uses of it. There's light as in power, the animating force, the animating power of the universe, which is where I think the symmetry is correct. And then there's light in the sense of a moral component where you have light and dark, the classic double system of good, evil. Which, and even in that case, the symmetry is correct as well, because you're never... The thing is like, as long as you have a degree of self independence or free will, you're going to have both sides of this coin, because the entire point of free will is the ability to choose to do your own thing. You can be altruistic or hedonistic. It doesn't, there's nothing to control your choices, which is why with the Taken, my argument would be there is like, okay, no, we haven't seen anyone taken that's not
a bad guy.
I'm trying to think real quick. We haven't really seen any Taken that's not a bad, not an enemy. But up until Mithrax, we hadn't seen any Fallen that weren't an enemy.
That's true.
Well, up until Varric. Sorry to correct myself. Up until Varric.
But as far as a former enemy, or at least former assumed enemy, because we had that world quest where we first meet Mithrax, but the enemy of my enemy, I think, is the name of it on Titan.
Yep, where he gives us the generator.
Right.
I guess my kind of rant there is I see the argument, and I see it just depends on, are we saying that, I don't know, like to me, I get it. And I think that to say that everyone has darkness within them is, from a moral standpoint, is correct, because it's, again, even if you're talking good and evil, if you have free will, you're going to have you're always going to have that choice. And so to technically say you're always going to have that kernel of darkness within you. Now, whether or not you nurture it and let it fester or bloom, whichever word you want to use for that, that's up to you. It's the old Cherokee two wolves parable.
Right.
My only issue with the whole... Okay, sorry.
No. Yeah, go for it. I'm just rambling at this point.
I was going to say, my only issue with defining the darkness and the light in terms of morality is going back to that, because you guys had this conversation before on one of your podcast or one of your episodes about morality being subjective, dependent upon
who's asking,
what society you're in, or
right.
Who's asking. So the whole, even the concept of darkness and light being used as a moral terminology is really just relative to who is looking at you.
Right.
The whole path of sorrow for the hive, it's this, it's a path that they choose, or that they walk on a normal basis. The whole walking into the deep, or the following of the deep, that is their life. That is their good to an extent.
Right.
That's just to them.
That was the explanation that I loved about Gaul is when they came out, or I think it was Luke Smith came out, and he was like, no, he's the hero in his own story. And I'm like, and that's what makes a good villain is, and I hate to even use the word villain, because it's exactly right. I mean, if you look at any military engagement in reality, both sides are always going to claim that they're the right. Like it's always it was always us versus them, and it's just a matter of which side is us and which. Well, it just depends on which side you're talking to, you know.
And the story will favor the victors.
Right? Yeah, yeah. That's, I mean, the victors write history, and that's, you know, good job, Churchill.
We run into that all the way in Destiny.
Oh yeah, yeah. But real quick, let's run through the intro notes, and then we'll get right back into the argument.
Yep.
In our last episode of Focus Fire Chat, we discussed the lore book, Truth to Power. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to rate and, if you can, leave us a written review on iTunes or comment on the episodes on Podbean or whichever podcasting app you use to enjoy podcasts. Reviews are extremely helpful as they not only let us know what we can do better, but help continue to expand the FFC family, which allows more and more perspectives to be heard. To those of you who have already taken the time to leave us a review, thank you. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a gathering place where the intent is to offer a week-long in-depth view of a particular subject from within game lore, with a special focus on the Destiny universe. This chat begins every Tuesday morning and runs until the following Tuesday, with topics decided by the group via a poll that begins every Friday and ends on the Tuesday morning of the new chat. Every Friday at around 10 p.m. Central, we get together to stream a high-level summary of the previous week's chat for those who are unable to participate. If you're a fan of lore in all its various forms, be sure to also check out thelorenetwork.com, where you can find a wide variety of some amazing content that covers a number of different titles and mediums. This will also be the new home for the Focus Fire Chat episode note archives and articles going forward. Our next chat is going to be a discussion on the extra lore content for May Mortal Kombat. However, as always, please be sure to weigh in on the poll this weekend to let us know which topics you want to discuss after that. Links to that poll can be found on either Twitter at FocusFireChat or within our Discord server. Before we jump into the information and thoughts the community had about the Symmetry, however, let's have a quick chat about this week's Lost Lore. I didn't do anything for Lost Lore because I figured this would be kind of more free flow episode, simply because, especially compared to the last, what, 2, 3, maybe even 4 episodes, we've kind of had thankfully very structured conversation, like, because the lore books kind of lend to that. Okay. Whereas this one, it's really, what's the Symmetry?
It's a philosophy debate.
Yeah, what's the Symmetry? Okay, now what do we talk about? I have no idea.
We can talk about Ulan-Tan.
Yeah, we can. And
we can talk about conspiracy.
The conspiracy of Ulan-Tan, why Ulan-Tan was so dangerous. I have, I'm sure Wicked, I know Green and I probably have our own thoughts. I'm sure you do too. Especially I'm curious actually, Wicked, to hear your thoughts on why they argue Ulan-Tan is so dangerous, because I have a theory that ties into it from a military standpoint. I'm just curious what your take on that is.
Can I actually pause and let's do who the Symmetry are? Let's do like the basics first, and then get into the.
This is why Green's the boss. Let's do that.
So the Symmetry is think about the. I'm trying to think of what besides the cult of Osiris. It's essentially a cult, but it's a group of people that formed together after Ulan-Tan died, who shared similar. Didn't they form after he died? Because there's that card that talks about that his ideas did not become popular until after he died.
Oh no, that's right, because that was the that was a recent one, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I think it was. No, I'm blanking on which one it was.
No,
was the
I
flight?
know. It's Oh God, I know which one you're talking about. Was it Thousand Wings?
May have been.
No,
I didn't write any.
That's the carp. Yeah, hang on. Yeah.
That's the one on the Vex.
You said that, and I was like, immediately, I was like,
it's like I know it's there. It may.
Well, and I guess my counterpoint was because of what was said in Ghost Fragment, the City Age, where you do see, like, you make that card technically, I think, also takes place after Ulan-Tan has disappeared, because they make the comment, who knew he'd be more trouble dead than alive, which is
right.
Yep. I love it. But because they're talking about the Symmetry is gaining a strong following, But I think the reason why I was hesitating was because there is a concept that I thought I saw someone, and I can't remember where I saw this. It was probably Reddit, which, put grain of salt on that one. But it was something about like the question of where do we find that Ulan-Tan was actually the founder of the Symmetry?
He wasn't necessarily the
right,
founder.
and that's why I was like, because I think that was the point, was they were like, it's never technically stated anywhere that he was the one that. I mean, there's the card The Darkness, in which the the Darkness from D1, where it talks about Ulan-Tan's thesis.
It's the new bond of reciprocity, by the way. That has the information in it.
Isn't that the one that's like the rant about like he was a you were jackals and all that?
Yes. Jackals, he was threadbare and haggard. Yeah. It's in that card. It's the second actual line of the card. So the Symmetry were a group that formed likely after, we're just going to say likely for now. It's fairly strongly suggested that it was formed after Ulan-Tan died and shared similar ideas and beliefs as he did. And the idea is, the basic idea, the most simple way to put the idea is that there is a balance that is required between light and darkness within the universe. You have to have a symmetry. There's two sides of the same coin. I don't think I can come up with another analogy that is any more simple than that. But
the bond of reciprocity. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to stop trying to talk.
Reciprocity.
That one. Whatever Green just said.
In the darkness, light shines more brightly, and where light shines, it casts a shadow. That's exactly one of the kind of.
That's exactly what
themes.
I was going to say. Is like when I see that. First off, I know it's hard with audio, but first off, it's not capitalized. So light here is not a capital L light, which I know that seems like a weird thing to focus in on, but when you see it 50 billion times capitalized in the middle of a sentence and then it's all of a sudden not, it kind of stands out.
Darkness isn't capitalized either.
Right. And so what I see there is the whole thing again of like, this is just physical light. It's back to, was it Sagittite that was saying we only recognize cold because of heat and all that?
Essentially, yeah. Which Lux did too.
Okay, so yeah, and that's a very common dichotomy that's drawn here, is because physically they are correct. If you have one, you are going to have the other, because now whether or not one is the absent, it's like the concept of the coloration of white and black, right? Is white the absence of black, or is black the absence of color? Like, because technically, if you look at it from a color wheel standpoint, white is the absence of all coloration, and black is the combination of all colors. Like,
but if you look from a light perspective,
if you look from a
opposite.
spectrum, right? I was about to say, but if you look from a spectrum perspective, it's entirely flipped, because white light, or like the bright white light, is all spectrums, and then black light is nothing. It's the absence of a light. And so,
and then if you hold it,
go for it.
I was gonna say something ridiculous.
That's even more intriguing. I want to hear it.
One of the other things that they had out there was that white is actually a shade of black, and vice versa.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
giant white screen, put your phone in front of it with a white screen on, and your phone turns black.
Yep.
Because the light.
But then that also goes into what we were saying earlier too, right? Is it's all subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the moral component. Is it a
blue dress, or is it a gold dress?
Oh God! Don't do that. No,
that's what it is.
It's a blue dress. It's a blue dress, and you're all just wrong. I was more interested in the llamas that got loose that day than I was in that stupid dress. Which, if you remember that, if you know what I'm talking about, I like you, because that was like the highlight of my day at work, was watching these stupid law enforcement people trying to corral two llamas.
Corral llamas.
It was like, I was like, it's just, anyways.
You could practically hear the piano playing in the background.
Oh yeah, you could. It was just, I was like, really? This is what national news is covering? Okay, whatever.
You just need
better than the dress
sax to play.
Oh, it was
fine.
It was so great. The reason that's so recent is something happened very similar just recently in our area, and that I'm like, oh my god, this is happening again. Like we're in a cycle. But like I think with Ulan-Tan, the problem, one of the big problems I have with Ulan-Tan, one of the few problems I have, because I actually don't have a lot of problems with him on a philosophical basis. I understand what he's talking about because it is very yin yang type concepts. My personal feelings on whether or not it's an excuse to do things is that aside, I see where he's coming from, but he does in the writings that we have, which granted, again, to be fair, is not much, and it is selected from, already incomplete writings. So we have that bias that we're contending with. But the selection of writings that we do have from him, it's very fluid. And are we talking about a metaphorical light, or are we actually talking about, light as what a guardian has? Because the thing with Ulan-Tan also, for those who might not be completely familiar with him, is Ulan-Tan was a warlock. He was a guardian.
Right.
And that is where his recognition, his familiarity with light as a source of power, as a source of the gift for manifestation of the paracausal capabilities, it was intimate because he was a guardian. He wasn't he wasn't a human philosopher at this time talking about this metaphor. No, he was actually on the field using the powers that he was talking about. And so that's where, for me, it's kind of difficult, because on some things, like this quote right here, in the darkness, light shines more brightly, and where light shines, it casts a shadow. From a philosophical standpoint, that's very circular. Which I also kind of appreciate, because Ulan-Tan, from what we've seen, has never kind of broached the subject of which came first. It's just the pragmatic. It's just the pragmatic of, here's light, and where there's light, there's darkness, and you only know the light because of the dark. Because it starts with in the darkness. So he's presupposing that it is darkness, and then because you're in darkness, you recognize that light, because the light will shine more brightly. And that kind of goes back to Wykid, what you're saying. If you have a white screen, you hold another white screen up, they are going to be contrasted. There's going to be a difference in the spectrum that's being displayed. Right. And because you're in absolute darkness, and if you don't really know what I'm talking about, what I would really suggest, if you've never had a chance, is go into a place that you can get like absolute darkness, which is really difficult in today's world. But the best way to do this is actually go on a cave tour.
That's so cool.
It is amazing. And so what they'll do often is they'll do what's called cave tours, and they'll take you underground. And usually caves, they have light systems set up, obviously, because you're underground. There's no sunlight, right? What will happen often is they will turn. They'll say, okay, everyone stop, whatever, and they turn off all the lights. And it is you will remember this sensation, because it is literally one of the few times that nothing changes, but you feel like 500 pounds has been put on you. There is nothing. And then when we did it, what I clearly remember is one of the guides held up a match, not even a lighter, like a match. He just lit a match, and it lit the entire place up. And it was like this, and it's a match. Again, if you were to strike a match outside, you wouldn't recognize that. Like, it's like, oh yeah, here's a fire. Cool. It's not going to do anything. You have to have like a spotlight to actually see the difference. But underground, where the darkness is actuality, this little flame just ignites the whole thing. And I think, to me, when I read that quote from Ulan-Tan, that's what I see in my head, is like, in this sea of darkness, even a small light will light it up. And then naturally, what happens when that happens, when you light a light in a dark place, is shadows. Shadows are darkness, but they're not. I guess the question there is when you say shadow, if you're saying that you're in darkness and you light a light, are the shadows the same darkness as what was before you lit the, there's also
or have you created new darkness with
right.
light?
Have you created a new scale of gray, if you will?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, is it even a gray at that point? Because the shadows always appear much darker than what is prior there, like in some ways.
Yeah.
When you light a match, I mean, you have the darkness, the absolute darkness of the cave, and then you light the match, and what you see residual technically is a shadow, is a gray of the two, but it looks as dark in some ways as you had before.
Right, and I think I would say that goes back to the perception, right, and the subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a funny story about that cave thing. The time that I got to experience it, my tour guide was kind of a jerk face and said that if you put your hand up and you wiggle your fingers, sometimes you'll see sparks. And so I didn't. I thought about it. I was like 12 when I did this. So, I mean, I thought about it. And it's like, okay, because you're supposed to put it up to your nose and because you have to get it real close to your face. And then you have to wiggle your fingers.
Were your brothers standing next to you?
Yeah, I think so. Because we all went there together. It's just one of those things like...
Damn, you missed out a good opportunity.
Yeah. Green was gullible as a child, people. It's just a thing. Very much so a thing. Oh, man.
Childhood innocence.
Yes, very much so. Needless to say, I don't trust tour guides anymore.
They're all liars.
You're all liars trying to make fun of me because you're bored.
Yeah, that's
I mean, I would be sorely tempted to start messing with people if I was a tour guide and had to do that every single day. I would be sorely tempted to mess with people.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, Blue. So now that we have the basics of what the symmetry is, what the philosophy basically is, the debate that the question that you were about to ask Wicked about there was something military themed. I'm trying to remember exactly what you had said.
So sorry. Here it is. I'm sorry. I'm looking. There was a quote from Ulan-Tan that I absolutely love, and it's not in game. It's actually from a TWAB, and it's I finally found it. I was like, I wrote it down because I was like, I'm going to totally use this. And the quote says, "Do you see the stars flutter? Now listen. They scream from the lacerations of our enemies. The balance has been threatened. Nightfall is upon us. This burden of light has never been heavier. We can sleep no more." And that kind of ties back when you're talking, Green, when you're talking about the concept of a cosmic balance, basically. I have said a lot of times, or I talk a lot about concept of paradigms and concept of worldviews. We see this being present within the Darkness Grimoire card, where we kind of get listed a list of different worldviews. And so when we talk about worldviews, and I'm trying to remember if I've ever kind of sat back and actually explained what I mean by a worldview. A worldview is like really kind of a theory of what it is that we exist in, right? So the symmetry as a worldview is there's arguably about 6 elements that any basic worldview should have. And the first one is an explanation of the world. Symmetry definitely has that. They have an explanation of what it is for the cosmic balance and all that. The second point that a lot of times will be said is what's called futurology, which is basically the question of where are we headed or where are we heading? And again, I think the symmetry has that. They are seeking to keep the balance. The third point is the values. So, answers to ethical questions, what should we do? This is where it kind of gets a little hazy, but I would argue that the symmetry also still has this, even though sometimes they kind of slip into really weird parables. and then you get like into praxology or methodology or theory of action. It's basically so like your values and your futurology will then get fed by praxology, which is how do you achieve your goals. And this is where the symmetry, I think, I don't really see a lot of this part
they're
in
the
what we
thinkers,
have.
not so much the doers.
Right.
Then you have the praxics, and who are the
right.
doers who don't really think.
And the thing too is like oh, sorry, chat. Ulan-Tan, we don't know if he was awoken or not. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I remember when I was putting together the list of light bearers, that was one thing I couldn't find. There's also the weird thing about the #Tan title, but we'll probably get into that a little bit later. But really quick, so praxology is how do you achieve your goals? The symmetry, I get the feeling that there is something there, but I just don't think we've seen it yet. And then, you have like epistemology, which is theory of knowledge, what is true, what is false. Again, symmetry kind of focuses on the even more pragmatic thing of like, this is the balance. And in a way that is actually, that is an epistemology as well. So they get that there. And then the final one is what's called etiology, which is basically the account of what's referred to as building blocks of the paradigm. And I think as far as that, if you want to call it a checklist, the symmetry definitely checks off all of those. So I feel comfortable, when I call the symmetry a paradigm, I kind of feel pretty strong that that's an accurate presentation. But within the city age card, right? Let me pull this up real quick. The city age card is where we get the comment about Ulan-Tan's teachings are too dangerous, too much fear.
This is from Zavala's perspective.
Yeah, I believe I always get confused on who's talking when.
Ikora has her own information or her own feelings about Ulan-Tan in a different card. I'm pretty sure the city age is mostly Zavala spoken. I'm gonna have to pull it up too. Hiding from War Beast.
Yeah, I think, and the city age is a tough one to read because there's there's no really indication of who's talking. Yeah, and it's a consensus meeting, so there's at any point at minimum like 5 people. So I mean, I think the speaker's not present there.
Ikora in Chamber of Night pretty much agrees, or like thinks, not necessarily agrees, but she thinks that he may be right.
But to kind of go to the question I had for Wicked is the identification of what they're referring to as being too dangerous is because if you look at the city as being locked in a military paradigm, right? Zavala views things as far as like, the defense of the civilians and everything, which is in a way an accurate portrayal. Then you have a
martial law situation.
Yeah, I don't know if there was martial law at that time, but like it's very, he sees things in a very strategic military sense. It's like you have to convince your soldiers that they're going to be able to win. And then you have this philosopher who is out here saying, hey, look, the balance is these both sides are going to exist in balance no matter what we do. To me, that's where the threat comes from, is because it's an undermining of the militaristic sovereignty of Zavala. Because it's saying, oh, wait, the people that we're fighting are destined to always exist. So how are you going to defeat them if they always, it's kind of that whole thing of like, you're fighting a fight that's doomed to fail. Whereas everything that the speaker and Zavala are trying to push is, no, we got to win. We got to win. Light's got to defeat darkness. Whereas Ulan-Tan's like, how is light going to defeat darkness? Like that doesn't even make sense. Like you can't have light. It's the heat cold thing. It can't be hot if you don't recognize what cold is. It's not that it can't, but you won't recognize it as heat.
Won't have the contrast.
Right. The contrast is what exists in order to, in our experience of reality, tell us that it's even there. So I was just curious if there was anything on your mind about that part.
As far as just from a military standpoint, I could definitely see where they're talking about demoralizing the troops and affecting it that way. However, I don't think that, because again, we talked about how he did not gain a following until after he was dead. Where I'm actually looking at and agreeing with you as far as the demoralizing, but not because of his views. If you look at the Bond card once again, and you look at that, it talks about how they looked at Ulan as being with this false image of what he used to look like, how his grand scheme and all these lines, but that he was actually haggard and downtrodden and essentially rambling meanderings and just nonsensical kinds of things. I think one of the reasons why he was dangerous for bringing down their morale is because I think Ulan-Tan was essentially losing his mind. And
so, yeah, I read that and it's similar to Edgar Allan Poe or H.P. Lovecraft.
So if a Guardian can lose his mind, one of the things they're looking at here is now other Guardians are seeing they're not. That's kind of going into the same thing as the path that Yor went down, where it's like, okay, if that can happen to one of us, what are we doing to stop that? And they have no answer for that. They don't know what's causing it to happen. So if something like that could affect a Guardian on a mental level and break them down, because so far we know of at least 3 Guardians at this point, three different names anyway, that have lost their minds or have lost their basic touch with what people would define as normal reality because of their meanderings or their contemplations of the darkness and the light. Toland, Yor, and Ulan. Essentially Ulan.
They all have very different paths that they took, though.
I mean, even Saint 14 and Osiris fit in that as well.
Mm-hmm. But I think Osiris would be less dangerous with that particular one because his is more of an obsession rather than what I would think would be dementia.
I see. Okay, I see what you're. I mean, I would argue it's tomato, but yeah, I see the difference. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Just as far as speaking from effect on morale.
Right, because the other thing you have is with the introduction of ghost stories, we have a number of entries where Guardians did lose their mind. Like I'm thinking Cranes and Windmills, the Don Quixote story. We do have precedents of.
Are they named?
No, it's so Cranes and Windmill. The reason I refer to it as the Don Quixote is, first off, the ghost is named Ponzo, which is the sidekick from the Don Quixote story. It's the little fat Spanish squire who rode the donkey in the cartoon, which was amazing. And then also it's just like, I mean, it's basically Don Quixote. He sees giants from the windmills, and I think he dies because a rock falls on him or something. And like the ghost abandons him because the Guardian starts ranting about how the Traveler is an egg that needs to be cracked to free the dragon so that he can kill it. Like he just started. I mean, he just goes off like into the deep end immediately. But that's where, when you're saying about the losing your mind, that's where my brain connected those two. Which actually, see, this is why I really should be careful about the tangents I ask people about, because now that could possibly also explain why Ulan-Tan's not around. Is we know that ghosts can abandon their guardians. I mean, we kind of always assume that, but now we have actual entries that are showing that. And if a ghost identified Ulan-Tan's rantings as dangerous, then on his death, he just wouldn't have been resurrected. That actually, to me, that actually kind of would give a bit of a nod to why, because we do know that Ulan-Tan is gone. Like, he is dead. We have the Grove in Io. Well, we don't have a body, which, okay, fine, fair enough.
Well, I guess somebody claimed they had a body.
Right, because they had the burial ring, right?
Which is in complete contrast to what the new Bond said he would have worn.
Are you talking about the bond of whatever that word is?
Reciprocity.
The bond of reciprocity talks about, again, going back to the whole thing of he was downtrodden, haggard, and everything like that. But the burial ring that he was buried with, again, when he was still very unknown, was this magnificent, beautiful ring.
It was really intricate. You could still see pictures of it up on Ish.
The Ulan-Tan's burial ring.
This is where I was. This is where I was going into that whole thing of the conspiracy, where I was kind of bringing that up and in chat when I was talking earlier with them.
Blue. There's something in show notes that it really bugs me. It looks like Russian.
Just one thing?
Oh,
the Symmetry Fang? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Symmetry Fang is...
What? Okay, so I kind of want to attempt to say it, but I'm going to butcher it. So if you know Russian, I am Sykes-Zentimihalian.
Yeah, it's like Sysint-Mihaji or Hali. It's
I don't know.
It's Mihai.
Like a 26-letter word.
Yeah, it's all consonants. It's actually Hungarian.
Gotcha.
And this is a yeah, I think that's right. It's the concept of flow, which is he's a psychologist. He's a Hungarian American psychologist. He's one of
name?
Yeah, that's his name. Yeah,
Why?
Because he's Hungarian. Like, I don't know. Like, did you miss the part where he was Hungarian?
That's so cruel. Could you imagine being like a first grader trying to write your name?
That's why they're test would start at writing your name.
Yeah, that's why they're so smart. Is they have to. Anyways, yeah. So like so the concept it's the concept of what's called flow, which is basically a mental state that, and everyone actually gets it. It's really cool. So he has a book or an article, I can't remember, but it's called Flow. I want to say it's a book too, because it's Flow, the Psychology of Optimal Experience. And basically, and I'll just read this quick synopsis. I mean, Wikipedia actually does a pretty decent job on explaining the high level view of this one, but it says that he outlines his theory that people are happiest when they're in a state of flow, which is a state of concentration or complete absorption with the activity at hand and the situation. It is a state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. The idea of flow is identical to the feeling of being, quote, in the zone or, quote, in the groove. The flow state is an optimal state of intrinsic motivation where the person is fully immersed in what they are doing. This is a feeling everyone has at times, characterized by a feeling of great absorption, engagement, fulfillment, and skill, and during which temporal concerns, time, food, ego self, etc., are typically ignored. And so and the only reason I have this connected to Ulan-Tan is because of the Symmetry flight, or Symmetry Fang, which got connected because of the word symmetry. And the Symmetry Fang armor, which is from, I believe it was The Dark Below, or no, I think it actually was Vanilla. It says there are 6 factors to the true flow. First is the loss of self. And so there's a kind of a checkpoint or check milestone listing that this individual has put together, breaking down the concept of it. It starts with control, it goes to relaxation, boredom, apathy, worry, anxiety, arousal, and then flow. And so like you basically will work through these mental states in regards to where you lie within like challenge level and skill level. And so flow is in the quadrant of this graph where your challenge level is at the highest that it can be, and your skill level is at the highest. A lot of people who are probably listening to this podcast will recognize this in terms of video game playing. When you're playing a game, when you get so involved in a game that you lose hours, that's flow. That's what this is being talked about. It's the sense of just being absolutely one with what you're doing and just completely losing track of everything in the world around you. And it's by no means necessarily a bad thing. It's actually a very human thing. Our brains are kind of almost in a way designed to kind of do this. He also kind of went on to say that repression is not a way to virtue. Basically, his view was when people restrain themselves out of fear, their lives are not necessarily diminished. Only through freely chosen discipline can life be enjoyed and still kept within the bounds of reason. So he was very big in the what's called positive psychology realm of the psychological communities. He was very big on what's usually referred to as self-actualization of yourself into making yourself the best that you can be, and that was kind of the idea was fully embracing what actually helped get you to the state of flow. Because the more you can be in the state of flow, first off, the more efficient you are, and also the happier you're going to be. You're going to be happier about it. Like, it's because you have like this. So if you picture a quadrant graph, right? You have the 4 quadrants. That top right is usually the one that everyone wants to, you kind of always are with regards to these. That's the ideal place. In that quadrant, you have the mental states of arousal, flow, and control. And flow takes up the predominant amount of that quadrant. And that's because, again, you have the challenge level that is high, and you have the skill level, which is also high. So when he says arousal, it's not a sexual arousal. It's a mental arousal. Your brain is
active.
You're firing. It's going. And anyone who has experienced that, which again I think most people have, will recognize that that's a good feeling. That means that you feel like you know what you're doing it well. It's something that you look around and not many other people can do, and I mean that is naturally a very good feeling. It's a very uplifting feeling for a person. But yeah, that's what the concept of flow really is.
Okay, so besides the concept of flow and the word that is non-pronounceable because Hungarian names are ridiculously difficult for their children, is there a way to tie it into Ulan-Tan a little bit more succinctly? Besides,
I mean, I would argue that Ulan-Tan existed in a constant state of flow.
Can one? I don't think. No, I disagree.
It's technically not possible, but like I think what I mean is like not well. So what I mean is like you see this with a lot of Edgar Allan Poe. Had a very similar existence to kind of my mental picture of what apparently Ulan-Tan existed in. Edgar Allan Poe was today he is regarded as a phenomenal writer. He is regarded as one of, if not the founding thinker for a lot of the darker fictions that we take for granted. A lot of that was kind of introduced by Poe. You also had Lovecraft and a few others, but in the time of his life, Edgar Allan Poe, as with most like great artists, Picasso, Van Gogh, all these other really good art, really top-notch artists today, in their lifetimes, they were not recognized as such. They were recognized, they were viewed as the outcasts, the people who were kind of
the crazy ones.
Yeah, they wouldn't ever go. Well, with Poe they did, but like with some of them they never
Lovecraft
would go.
They did too.
Well, Lovecraft also, there's a whole nother story with that.
Yeah.
Lovecraft had a lot of things going on with him that, I mean, anyways, with Poe, one of the things is that he would get to the point where he was writing stuff to the degree that he wouldn't eat for days. Like he didn't care. Like he was so Beethoven was notorious for it. Most big musicians, I think, were pretty notorious for doing the same thing. Yeah, composers. Sorry.
No, you're good.
And painters will do it too. I mean, Van Gogh is a prime example of this. And the story of Van Gogh is it's a heartbreaking story, and it's also one that really highlights the dangers of mental health for people. Because Van Gogh was there's a very sad story there, but again, these were people who were so not trapped, but so in their heads, and with these worlds that just were, for lack of a better word, they were just so much brighter and more vibrant than the reality around them, that they were fascinated and obsessed with these worlds, and they were doing everything they could to bring that into reality, to show people, to share that, that fascination with people. I think
there's a line that goes with this. Even paradise is a prison if you can't leave.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I guess the choice, before? The question I would have to that is, my response to that is it that you can't leave, or is it that you don't want to? And I think that's where the difference lies, because I would argue with like Edgar Allan Poe, and some of these, Poe's a bad example because he probably had he's very similar to Lovecraft, and there was a lot going on in Poe's life. But like, you know, some of these composers like Monet would be a good example too. Monet was someone who lived through his paintings. He lived through the creations that he did. You know, Da Vinci was also another one of these like great thinkers. And they would constantly be, I mean, they would go days without eating, without sleeping, because they were so fixated on what they were doing that it didn't matter. To them, it just absolutely, with Mozart, but like when he was writing, didn't matter at all.
Yep. A lot of brilliant minds just absolutely lose it at the end, and it's the not healthy balance of not being able to get out of flow a lot of times.
Right.
Do you think they can't get out of flow, or do they choose not to get out of flow? Because when you get into flow,
that's a
lot of
question.
times you can only come out if somebody distracts you.
Well, whenever you talk about like the chemical imbalances of the human brain, emotions, especially when you're talking about just a continuous flow and a continuous uptick of emotional high, like what they're talking about with the flow, that can be just as addictive as any kind of drug can be.
Right.
So that'd be like asking a drug addict, do you really want to take this drug away or do you not want to take this drug anymore? The addiction, that reliance on that high, could very well be influencing every bit of their decision to try and take the drug again.
Yeah, and I would argue from a psychological standpoint, it would be even more addictive, because if you're dealing with, from a mental standpoint, if that's the way we're going to look at that for, let's say Ulan-Tan this is what we're talking about. If you look at the physical state of what, in the Bond is being described, his flow state would be so much better than reality.
Right.
It's the question of, it goes back to that quote about paradise, right? It's again, is it that they're trapped, or is it that they don't want to come out because they're scared, or because, that ties into a whole host of psychological concepts of the explanation of psychosis is, sometimes it's the fact that the patient doesn't want to be cured, because, reality is a lot worse than whatever, whether that is a hellscape or a paradise. It's something that they, at least in some form of fashion, have a bit of control over. And reality, you don't have that, and this is talking about in real life. So I can see the argument for Ulan-Tan's, being stuck in his head, whatever. I see that, because I also kind of identify that, because I'm slightly like that as well, as far as like when I get into something, I shut out the outside world. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. Some of the greatest stuff that I've done has been done in that state. And if you look, and again, going back to all the free, great free thinkers, whatever you want to call them, a lot of times, Da Vinci has entries, or like pages and pages of entries in his journals talking about this concept and about how to get into that state and how to, initiate that state as quickly as possible. And it's because it really does engage the best of you in the creative process.
There's books written about it.
Oh yeah, there's tons of books. Yeah,
sports books. There's a whole there's a music book that I took a class on it, on how to get into flow state, because musicians perform better in that state too. Actors.
Oh yeah, Hex in chat is also bringing up the concept of neurodiversity versus having disorder or disease. That's exactly true. And Hex actually, the point that he brought up first is the catharsis for trauma. Flow is a huge thing, because it's the concept of, kind of what Wykid was saying about that release. It's not necessarily endorphins, but it's the neurotransmitters that indicate that you're happy,
right?
Which is a gross oversimplification of that concept, and don't kill me for it. I understand that's a gross oversimplification, but the biological component of what we refer to as happiness, whatever that is, it does seem to engage more frequently when you are in a state of flow. And so that's where, again, it's the question of if you're using this to kind of get away from reality, to kind of to bring pleasure to a unpleasurable existence, if you will. To me, it makes perfect sense that I would be existing in this state as much as possible.
So here's my question then. I mean, we were talking about balance and the need for contrasting to be able to identify. If you constantly exist in a state of flow,
you're constantly out of balance.
You're constantly out of balance, but wouldn't it eventually, because of the need for the contrast, and this is kind of going back to some readings and stuff that I did back in college, that without knowing the counterweight anymore, or forgetting the counterweight, you don't feel as much pleasure at some point because you've desensitized yourself to it.
I mean, that's also the argument for most addictive substances is I mean, let's just pick one that's really safe to talk about. Let's talk about bacon for a second. Bacon.
I had some today.
Yeah, no, but I mean, but the thing about it is it's exactly like an addictive substance, because it basically is. I can never remember what the chemical is, but the first time, so like the bacon is one of those things where the first time you eat it, the neurotransmitters that fire off in response to the sensation of that taste set what's usually referred to as a bar. And just like with most narcotics, actually, talking like heroin, cocaine, any of the harder narcotics, your brain will never actually be able to achieve that same bar. It will constantly be a diminished return on. You can eat, which is why bacon is so addictive. Because basically your brain is at a very basic level trying to achieve that same pleasure reception, that same pleasure, and it can't, because the neurotransmissions of chemicals it can't achieve it. It's never going to get that. So what a lot of times will happen is you'll eat more. So instead of eating one piece, you'll eat 5 pieces. Well, you're consuming more, but your brain, the chemical influx is actually still lower. Like it's this weird thing with neurochemistry that it's arguably there to protect your brain. But it's also part of the reason why we get addicted to certain things, is because we're always constantly, we're a pleasure-centered organism. Like that's kind of the thing, is like the vast majority of humanity avoids pain. Like there are outliers to that, and I mean, but I actually no, there's not, because even in a masochistic standpoint, that is a form of pleasure.
Yeah.
It's just what all of us recognize as pain causes them pleasure. But anyways, that's a dangerous tangent.
That is a dangerous.
That's a very dangerous tangent. It's a fascinating tangent, but it is definitely a dangerous tangent.
That's an after chat.
Yeah, that's oh man, that's it. Anyways, but like, because of that, that kind of ties into this whole concept of the season of opulence as well. We are hardwired to register our world through pain and pleasure. Like, we have pain and pleasure centers. That's what most of our nerves actually do. And so if you find something that gives you pleasure, then there's a very, that's where the concept of like temptation kind of comes from, is that it gives you pleasure, but it's not always good for you. Bacon is the primary example, because you can eat 5 pounds of bacon and it's not good for you, but it might in the moment feel really good. Like, it's this weird dichotomy of the human brain versus the human body.
Yep.
Don't badmouth. I am not badmouthing bacon. I am trying to explain.
You're going to get more
from
salt
a neurochemical
from the bacon comment.
The main thing I got about that whole thing was that our body's attempt to fight off drug addiction is the reason why we have the Baconator.
I mean, that's not wrong. It's just
no. I don't even like the bacon. I like bacon, but I don't like the Baconator. Just don't.
So getting back with the as far as the balance and talking about Ulan-Tan with his whole existing within a perpetual state of flow. Something I wanted to mention as far as this whole balance thing, if he were in a state of dementia, but not able to fully enjoy that state of flow, would that not qualify as being, like, as far as he's not in a constant state of flow per se, but still maintains some awareness of the reality around him?
I don't
You get what
know
I'm
if you
saying?
can get into that state though, can you? Where you're dealing with both?
When you're in the flow, you're still aware of your surroundings and you're aware of what's going on to for the most part, until you get to the point
there's
where you
there's
absolutely
arguably
delve deep.
because that would, if you, I see what you're saying. Like, if you entered into a state of flow to a point where you were legitimately not aware of your surroundings, I would actually probably say that's more of a psychotic break than a state of flow. Like, that's a break from reality.
Right.
Not a, because when you're in flow, I would agree. I think the argument would be that there is a peripheral state of your brain that does recognize the outside world. It just doesn't care. It's not that it doesn't exist. It just is like, yeah, that's cool. I don't care that it's 4 a.m. I want to play video, whatever. Whereas if you were so focused on what you're doing that your reality didn't exist outside of that, then yeah, I would argue that's more of a psychotic break than a state of flow.
So going off of that, then you've got Ulan-Tan in a state of flow, but kind of, wisping off back and forth in a state of flow where he's saying, I don't care about what's going on in the world, or I'm not really paying attention to it. I'm not really giving it my thought. In addition to coupling that with the idea of his entire thesis on the darkness, the balance with the light being absolute necessities, one side of a coin, all that good stuff. Combining all of those together and then putting that in the face of other Guardians with the comment made by Zavala, keeping all this in mind as far as Zavala looking down at other Guardians and what we know about the way he really looked, and looking at it from a kind of suspicious standpoint of his burial bond being a replica of his bond, but yet he was haggard and downtrodden and insane and all this other stuff.
Would get a grove named after him on a planetoid moon? Like,
same thing, same reason why we have artists who have statues built of them, or all the people we just talked about that were...
Okay, no, so perfect example, Mozart. Mozart was Mozart was immensely popular, incredibly popular, but he was buried in a pauper's grave, which at the time was literally a hole where 50 or more people were thrown in. His body is amongst the remains of a ton of people. And so Ulan-Tan, who at that point, like, I doubt his body is buried in the grove, but it's just named, and
because it's a lot easier to bury him as a hero.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Because the other thing that we have to take into account is also the censorship that the speaker was seemingly very a big fan of, with, like, the whole thing with the saga of yore. That whole thing became a self-fulfilling prophecy of, let's not let Guardians fall down this path, and then because everyone was obsessed with trying to figure out what was so big and secret about it, they fell down the path.
Right.
Exactly. So in that same mindset, if Ulan-Tan's sitting there preaching about balance, which isn't too far away from what Shin Malfur is trying to go for,
right?
Then, I'm pretty much convinced that's part of the reason why he's back, or why we see so much more of him now, is because of the fact that the speaker's gone.
Oh yeah. God, does that mean that Ulan-Tan is the voice in the trailer for Season of Opulence? Somebody, I think it was Bibble, I don't know if he's still in chat. Bibble was like, hey Green, who do you think this voice is?
That would, oh my gosh, if they bring back, oh my gosh, that
could
makes
you imagine?
Yes, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
But the thing is when I listened to it,
he's still alive.
It sounded
I can see
similar to the speaker, though. That's the only thing that I know. It's not the speaker, or at least theoretically, it's not the speaker. But it has a very similar gravitas to it that the speaker tends to use. So it's an important figure.
Ulan-Tan comes back as the next speaker.
Yeah, I don't know. But okay, so it is the Visions of Light mission where we go into the Grove, and that's the mission where I think it's the second mission where you get the power to get your next super, your secondary super. and you have the Grove of Ulan-Tan. You have to get rid of both the Taken and the Vex. The idea, if the Taken and the Vex are not necessarily polar opposites, because I would argue that they're not, but the perspective between the two, who would you think would be the light on that, if there is a lighter side?
Vex.
Really? Even though the Vex, they're moving towards entropy, which many would argue is purely the darkness, as pure the darkness as you can get.
Well, sometimes the greatest good is looked at as being the most evil. Look at Thanos. He's probably one of the best examples I can give of that, where the greatest peace in the galaxy is one where no life exists.
Mm-hmm. So
So
the instead of the loss of will being within the form of the Taken is secondary as far as evilness compared to the Vex and the movement towards entropy.
Well, and that's the other part of it is that are we sure that the Taken themselves, but prior to Oryx, what was their role? Do we know?
We didn't know of the Taken until Oryx.
Right. And Oryx didn't know of them. So what was their purpose in existence prior to Oryx becoming the Taken King? Were the worms just ordering them around all over the place, or did they exist as their own individual beings capable of their own lives and thought?
I mean, there's a possibility that they existed prior to Oryx, at least within our system, because I'm trying to remember back to Book of Sorrow, where Oryx learns how to take within the deep.
By taking the tablets. Right.
By taking the tablets. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there were Taken before within the deep, just that the possibility of a complete...
Creating Taken.
Taken. It's like the theory that is proven in reality. So if the deep is another realm, another region within the paradigm of where we are at, much like the 9 are within a different region, or different region isn't a good word for it, but different realm or plane. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. If the Taken are initially, or the power from the Taken or of the Taken are from another plane, theoretically, it could have been just a theory there that is a proven concept here. So we don't know if there were Taken prior, but I don't know. It's just the thing, like, the Taken is the loss of will, essentially, that your will becomes not necessarily your own, though there are those, obviously, from D1, I can't think of his name, the mission where we're at the Shrine of Oryx, and it's not Urzok, that's the frickin' Hive Knight, but there's the mission back in D1 where we go back to the Shrine of Oryx, and we fight the Hive Knight, I want to say, a giant...
The giant one that was Savathun's son. That was
Malak?
Malak. Yeah,
there we
Savathun's
go.
son that was captured by Oryx, essentially.
Right. So he had enough free will that he was a threat. And there was another one where we go inside the Dreadnought and fight. He also had enough free will. So there's not a complete loss of will if you were a powerful character.
So going back to that whole thing of, Donna got the Malak reference.
Right.
The thing that I'm talking about, or the reason why I went with the Vex being the light and the darkness, or the Vex being with the light, is that the darkness has always fed upon that survival of the fittest, and there's still a continued existence, but it's justified existence. The path of the light, for the most part, has seemed to be just peace at cost. Because as far as the whole thing with Fundament, where it talks about the Traveler, and that the Traveler created the God Wave to, smash everything. Granted, it's a somewhat one-sided argument because it's written by the Hive.
Right.
But the Traveler's end goal is peace. It wants everything to exist as peacefully as possible. Granted, it's not going to be a wonderful life, but people won't have to be hurtful or harmful to each other or constantly having to defend themselves. It'll just be a normal existence. And the Hive, or the darkness, thrives off of proving worth in life. So to me, the Vex embody more out of the light than pretty much any other entity out there, because they are the culmination of a single being or a single life form pulled into one network, working as a synonymous unit, or what's the word I'm looking for? Not even synonymous.
Unified.
Working as a unified force all together. So this whole thing of them bringing to a singularity of a Vex and bringing that timeline down to one thing, it's all about peace. Nothingness is peace. Death to everything is peace. So there's that, and that kind of goes to that whole thing of going so far into the light or the goodness and look from the other side of it. Once you start looking at it, be like, oh my God, that's evil.
It's a funny thing. We were talking, going back all the way to the beginning of the show, of the perspective of light and dark and how you define that, and your perspective viewing that colors so much of what we're dealing with. Just, it makes me wonder. It really makes me wonder. And with Ulan-Tan's idea, a balance, is there a balance when the perspective shifts so rapidly of what is quote unquote good and evil within the realm of the game, that there is really no opportunity to actually have a good or evil, win or lose type thing, that it is all just a construct that we build to tell ourselves that makes it okay for us to do what we do? Does that make any sense?
It does. I think I agree.
It was just a very rambly way of trying to put a question with some explanation at the same time. I don't know. Trying to figure out the best way to put it.
It goes back into the whole thing of, are we looking at light as a power, or are we looking at it as a morality measurement?
Well, if we're looking at light within the universe, we assign light and dark to various creatures often. Pyramid ships equal dark. I mean, I'm going to be very simplistic in it. Cabal, darker, even though they're obviously not as dark as some of the characters within some respects, because they're another faction more so, rather than a quote unquote bad group. I don't know. I have a hard time viewing the Vex as anything but evil, but that's just my perspective on them.
Look, here's the way I end up really looking at it, because really in Destiny I've gotten to the point where I cannot define anything by good and evil. I look at it from the point of chaos and order. That's the light is for order, the dark is for chaos. So
then we are dark, because we're not bringing order to anything.
We're not, but we believe we are.
But that's perspective
we are trying to bring order. It is perspective based, yes. However, again, going back into this whole thing of, we are trying to establish order in a society where we are the superior class. Essentially, the human race is the one that comes out on top. That is how humanity would define its order. Not necessarily in concern of galactic balance or anything of that nature. The driving force of the Guardians and humanity is to survive. That's it. They don't care about as far as the real balance of it, the main driving force for the overall species is survival.
That's it. I would argue that's most societies or most groups.
It is. However, going into the Cabal, we have Callus, who is not just he wants the Cabal to survive. He wants to bring everything in. He wants to become allies with everybody. You don't see that with the human race.
Oh, that's not his end goal, though. His end goal is indulgence.
Yes, his end goal is to be there at the finish line.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. It gets kind of that point where the balance is between chaos and order in my mind, where we do have order as far as humanity. We have our own internal order. We have our structure. We have our city. We have our laws and our rules. But then we also have the chaos in us.
So we're essentially doing the same thing as the Vex, but doing it in a different manner, because the Vex are trying to create their own order.
Well, the Vex are an extreme. That's where the goals are somewhat similar, but not the same. And instead of looking at it as where's the goal at, look at it as basically a I shape, where you have two different points. We sit roughly in the middle, and you got the Cabal and the Fallen kind of circling around in the same general area in that bigger portion of the eye. And then on the two tips, you've got the Taken in the Hive and the Vex, where on one side, they want complete chaos where the strongest is, or everyone is always fighting and they're always trying to survive. They are always trying to prove strength through survival, or basically Darwinism. And then on the other side, you have the Vex, who want complete and absolute order with no chance of any chaos.
Right. Blue, do you want to hop in with this?
I mean, I can see that.
I've been running my mouth.
No. I
think the thing with Callus too is that his end goal is he wants to be a witness to the final shape.
Right. And I think that's something that Wicked was mentioning.
Right.
Is that he wants to be the winner. He wants to be the survivor.
Well, it's not, I would say it's not even a matter of like winning. I mean, his form of winning is being present, not being the final one. Shape. Yeah. I would, I don't know. Cause like the final shape is much more predominant within the hive culture for sure. But Callus does recognize that when he saw whatever he saw within the void, whether that was the 9, whether it was, the worm gut, whatever it was, because he comes back and he says that he wants to be a witness to it.
Well, because he sees it as inevitable anyway.
Yeah, he sees it as it's something that's already been, it's already happened. It's just reality's catching up.
Dino's saying in chat he doesn't want allies. Where I was going with that, Dino, was more he doesn't want allies so much as to be there with him at the end. He wants allies so that he can survive.
Yeah, right. He's a user. He's using for tools.
I was about to say he's building his toolbox is what he's doing.
Yeah,
which is exactly what the shadows were.
Yeah, and then
but yeah, no, I like the concept of the chaos order thing. It's definitely I would be curious if you held that spectrum up to the same, like on a race, an overall generalization of the race, though. I'd be curious if there would be a difference in where in the placement of the spectrum that would be, as far as like,
I mean, we talked about the Vex and the Hive.
I was about to say, like, the only one that really kind of messes it all up, as far as like a moral standpoint for me, is the Vex, because they are in and of themselves kind of apathetic about whether or not something's. I mean, to them, the concept of good is that it's organized and it's the confluence, right?
You could also argue that the Vexes, their goals are the most selfish out of all of them, because there's literally, they're all technically of one mind, or
it's the most altruistic. I mean, it depends too, because I mean, like, you could also argue
perspectives in the world,
right? But I mean, what I'm saying there is, like, you could also argue in the same vein that it is actually the most efficient use of the energy that is in the universe. That's like the Thanos argument. It's like, from one side, it makes a bit of sense. I still don't agree with it, but it, like, you can see
at the point.
Yeah, he kind of does have it. I mean, he does. God, there's so many holes in his logic. But I mean, regardless. But I mean, what I mean is, like, even though we perceive it as selfish, in their mind, I do see the point that Wicked's making about the order chaos spectrum instead of the good evil spectrum with regards to the Vex, especially, because I would think that ties into kind of everything that has been said about them. Is they don't.
So maybe we've had the wrong definition, and it's literally been a loss in translation for us this whole time. That the whole point is not the good versus evil, but the order versus non-order, or chaos.
Yeah, sorry. Hex in chat was saying something. Callus is like, I think Callus is. It's really hard for me to hold back some theories that I have on Callus, because there's things about the way Callus is presented that actually begs the question of if he's actually as addicted to hedonism as he is, or if there is actually something else going on.
An endgame?
Yeah, I'm having, the more and more I kind of dig into Callus's story, the more and more kind of larger thoughts I'm having about what is actually going on with him. There's a lot of hints in my mind that Callus is much, 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 much more than just a figure of the Cabal. There's like, so that's part of my problem with that. So I mean, like, but if Callus, if we take Callus as he presents himself as, you know, on the surface, then yes, I think that he is indeed an avatar of what happens when hedonism runs rampant. Because the high that we were kind of talking about earlier is exactly what he's trying to find. He's constantly looking for that next high. He's like the existential junkie, if you will. The problem is his drug of choice is existence. And that's where, in my mind too, if we're going to take it down that road, that's what makes Callus so dangerous, is that he is searching for that next high. He is an addict to, you know, not proving his existence in sword logic or in, you know, Imbaru or whatever it is that turns out to be Zivu's, you know, poison of choice. But actually just living in the moment and in that unadulterated seeking of pleasure. You know, but again, I find it hard because I also don't see that being Callus. So, and that ties into a larger theory that I have. But
there's so many theories that now I want to talk about Callus.
I know, Callus is very enigmatic, I think would be the best word for him. Well, by design.
Also topical at the moment as well.
Right. Yeah. It's not. I mean, it's only like 4 days, and we're gonna get to hear some more about him or something. There's something going on in game. I
already warned my raid team that I will be reading lore while we're doing the raid, so you're gonna have to deal with it.
Yep.
I gotta do homework.
I gotta catch up, guys. There's a lore drop.
I love Matt's drop for his video. Your homework is to read all the lore. You haven't done it, so here I am to help. I'm like, yes. But as far as like the I don't even know how I got onto the tangent of Callus. I'll be honest. I'm just going to go back to Ulan-Tan.
We were talking about the good versus, or the chaos versus order.
The chaos versus order, yeah. I mean, I think the beautiful frustration with the Symmetry and with Ulan-Tan for me is really the tidbits that we have are both really good breadcrumbs, but they're just breadcrumbs. So it's like there's tons of ways that I can interpret that and you know, I read certain things being said, and then like we'll be having these conversations, and you know, Wykid, you'll say something, and I'm like, oh, like, you know, it's like, you know, just there's so much room for interpretation and assumptions that is just it's just fascinating, but it's also endlessly frustrating.
Don't ask me how I think it's connected to Toland.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, God. I'm right there with you.
Please don't ask him how it's connected. Please don't.
Connected to what?
Toland.
Oh.
If I already promised him, if we ever have a Toland talk, that he gets to come on for that one, because he's gonna rant for a while.
I mean, it's all connected, right?
All light is connected.
No, Lord.
Especially if you need to make a guardian disappear.
Oh my God! Let's no. Please no.
I'm both. I'm both curious and terrified at the same time, which is a bad combination for me. So
you should pop into my stream sometime and ask him. He'll rant about it for a while, and then I will just roll my eyes, because we've gotten into this discussion many times on. I have a very blunt view about Toland.
No,
I get that he's a gray character, but
no, you love Toland. What?
Right?
He's an incredibly interesting character, but
such a kind soul.
Such a kind soul.
God, oh my God, no, desist. No, it's just the one of the things that drives me crazy about some of the different characters that we have that are main characters, enemy-wise and whatnot, is that each of them have their own vice of a sort, whether it's forced upon them or a vice that is of their own making. Calluses is more of his own making. Oryx, Zivu, and Zavi's were all kind of sort of forced upon them, even though they're technically part of their own personality quirks type thing. If that is going to be a generalized theme of characters, what are guardians besides just the drive for loot?
Well, I mean, I would argue that is what guardians are.
We know that Mara exploited it.
Well, I mean, and this ties into, I know, Green, you know what I'm going to say here, because I might be working on the snapshot that I'm working on actually ties into this too. Because that's the thing, right? I mean, Osiris made this comment. Multiple thinkers have made this comment about us. It's guardians are extremely easy to exploit. Like I don't understand why we are in game. It is actually from a lore perspective, it is a little frustrating. It's like, is no one paying attention to what is going on with this stuff? Like, I mean, how many times do you get tricked by the same thing before someone's going, aha, wait a second, this might be a bad idea? No, because it's got shiny toys. But Osiris makes the comment that there is there's something innate in that, whether you want to call that a fourth wall break or, whatever, it's not, but whatever. It does seem like that is an intrinsic value, within Guardians, which, if you want to go that route, what that makes me immediately think is that mean that we're a villain in and of ourselves because we have a vice?
That's what I was kind of going towards. It's like, if we're not balanced out in and of ourselves and able to put aside these things and check ourselves, are we any better than the villains that we fight, quote unquote villains?
Are we any better than the monsters we hunt? Yeah.
Or the monsters we use?
The line between light and dark is so very thin. Do you know what side you're on?
So
I'm with Toland.
On that one.
You're with Toland. I'm going to smack you.
I like him.
I'm going to smack both of you.
Wicked's like, Guardian we can keep him.
Oh my god, both of you are getting it at Guardian Con.
Alright, so question though. Going off of that whole thing right there, one of the specific ones that I believe we haven't talked about yet, 1,000 Wings. It talks about the demiurge and specifically goes into these are the gods that each of these races serve. And I actually posted this tweet in particular not too long ago because I very much specifically wanted to look into this, and this is why Green is going to absolutely hate me. The specific sentence referring to the Guardian. Right. Grant the Guardian godly power, and that Guardian shall fashion a perfect rifle. The demiurge of the Guardian is the gun. When it talks of the other races that are there, anytime it mentions something like a physical substance, for instance, the Fallen is ether, it redefines it as survival. The demiurge of the Cabal is authority. The demiurge of the Vex is thought. These are all abstract concepts. When it comes to the Guardian, we are given a physical object. What is a gun for? What is the sole purpose of a gun?
Elimination.
To cease life. It's meant to kill.
Right, yeah. Elimination.
Well,
the demiurge.
I'm debating how much I want to argue this because I kind of agree with you, but I can also see the argument there being it's similar to the idea of what's the concept of a sword. Is it an oppressive tool or is it a defensive tool? It's dependent on.
But there's not really. You can't block with a gun versus a sword.
Oh, right. No. Yeah, right. No. I know. That was a very poor analogy.
Yeah.
What I meant was
along with that. I get what you're saying. Are you using the gun as a protective nature?
Right.
But in either case, whether it's a defensive measure or whether it is an offensive measure, the point of the gun is to
destroy.
Cease. Yeah. Is to destroy it. So then the demiurge of the Guardian is death.
But we must remember
when
that the demiurge is not the god. It is
Which-
only the thing that converts perfect divine will into imperfect material form. We may
Listen.
wield the demiurge, but if we do, what
Listen,
god
Plato.
wields us?
Listen,
It's
Plato.
Ulan-Tan. It's his quote.
No, it's also, well, I mean, it's a play off
It
of the
is.
Platonic concept
it
of
is.
the demiurge.
It is.
The other funny thing too is that if you look at the species that are being listed or that we have interactions with in Destiny, only 2 of them play with death in the same vein that the Guardian does, and that's the Hive and the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
So the demiurge of the Guardian being death makes perfect sense too, because we are by nature able to use death as a weapon. I mean, geez, we use it as a strategy. Our Guardians are called out in multiple times in different lore entries as using their own death as a way to trick and to, through war of attrition, win battles. So I mean, I think so. We're basically personifications of Thanos or Thanatos.
Thanatos, not Thanos.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking Thanatos, and yeah. Anyways, my words are fun tonight.
I mean, it is getting pretty late.
Mm-hmm.
And you had said this was going to be a short episode.
Yeah,
Shame
but
on
then we brought philosophy into it, and
Right?
I just got distracted.
No, I think we all got distracted. There's lots of good stuff we can talk about with this that, unfortunately, even though the Symmetry themselves are very small as far as topic-wise and lore, the concepts that they talk about can touch so much of Destiny.
Well,
which
and
is
I mean,
fun.
real quick too, just on that idea alone, it's like your question about Green, and I think maybe Wicked, this might be kind of similar to where you're going, is the idea of like, what if Ulan-Tan's point of danger was the fact that he was calling us out for not being the perfect people that we claim to be, and that we need to balance that. We need to balance that seeking of power, that seeking of the gun, the seeking of destruction. We need to balance that out with, and it's not saying that we need to balance it out with, the creative process, whatever, but it needs to be tempered. We can't overlook, as Guardians, we need to be aware of that weakness and overlook the tendency of a Guardian to be like, oh, look, a shiny new, Yellowhorn, and actually think about what we're doing. I think to me, that's what, when you were saying that, Green, that's what was standing out to me, was the balance that Ulan-Tan actually you can argue is being spoken of, is actually the balance of the reward system that so often is corrupted by manipulators, whether that is, evil, Oryx, or, arguably neutral, Marasov, but I mean, it is arguably neutral. I use the word arguably.
Okay.
Jeez.
It's like, she is so not a neutral player.
I don't even know what kind of noise that was.
I know it was a more of like, I really want to yell at you, but I'm trying to be polite.
So I'm gonna wail and
I'm gonna. No, but I mean, like, it's just it's been you've seen multiple times now where that has been the source of manipulation. Like that is front and center. I mean, even the speaker used it as a manipulative tool, because that was like, and even Osiris did it with the Vault of Glass. I mean, Xur's
the Nine
definitely
are doing it.
Yeah. So again, it's
Xur took a while to do it this week. Good lord.
Well, he had to find the Suros. It wasn't on the shelf that they told him it was.
Yeah, it wasn't. He didn't bring the right garbage truck, because remember, he's a garbage man.
They said that it was on the shelf to the right, and it was actually on the left, so he got confused.
It's hard to see up on top of those shelves when your back's bent like that.
Yeah, well, that's why you don't piss off Orin when she has a giant sledgehammer, okay?
Speaking of which, we should talk about that at some point on the show, because I think that is a hilarious freaking story.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. Don't piss off Orin.
Don't piss off a Titan. A Titan.
I'm more, even when they're super short, apparently.
She is tiny.
She is a tiny.
I must admit nothing about Titans. I will not give Dwyer the satisfaction. No.
But no, so that's what when you were talking about the gratification piece of the Guardians, I was like, that's actually a good another potential of an uncomfortable conversation that Ulan-Tan kind of forces is, can you turn that off in the Guardian's mind? Or is that a temptation, a vice, whatever you want to call it? Is that something that is so intrinsic to our existence that it's just, it would be like asking the hive to stop with the sword logic at this point.
So with that last one, with the card with the Thousand Wings card, would you get the idea that Ulan-Tan believes in this and everything that's said here? As far as this is what the Guardian's Demiurge is. The Guardian's Demiurge is the gun, and that is what we are.
He is one saying it in this card, for one. But he may be pursuing it more as a thought experiment rather than an actual assertion.
Well, so, and again, I think that's also the balance component, right? I think that's his point, is we wield the Demiurge, because that last question, right? We may wield it, but if we do, what God wields us? I mean, that ties into the entire thing with Oryx and the quack gun that I always forget.
You know what the answer is? The quack. What gun?
I'm interested
the touch of malice.
Why do you call it the quack gun?
Oh my God! Go! If you have it, go listen to it. It's quack.
Actually, that's the one gun I never earned in D1 because I couldn't get past the stupid rising.
Chatawite, Justin's clan, and us. Whenever we ran the Taken, it was it was a call out. It was like, time for the quack, and his quack, and all of a sudden you have like 6 people just on chat going quack.
Oh my God. Okay, so here's my question then, or the answer to your question, I guess. Which God controls us? It's who is ever controlling the loot. That's the easy part.
Yep. You mean the prison of elders?
I mean, whoever's in charge of giving us that.
Is that our Demiurge, though?
Yeah, I think
is that really what it is?
I really think it. I think it really is. Is that even with Gambit, and the whole thing going on there? Whoever is in charge of handing us the loot, that is our master for that time being. Unquote.
Even outside of Gambit, you can see that, because with Joxer and Redrix, and the Drifter completely buys them off.
Crucible. Getting Luna's Howl, for instance.
But why get the weapons?
Because it's the power. It's the power that you want.
What? To do what with?
To be able to conquer more, because that's what we are. It's a never ending cycle, right? Right.
We get the powerful weapons to make us more powerful. Well, I mean,
either an end or you prove the sword logic, right?
Right. That's what I mean. Is like, but so this is where again my frustrations spike, because it's like, for someone who sits down and thinks about that, yes, there is an end, but I can also see the Guardian being, going back to the massive tangent on flow, the Guardian is trapped in a state of flow where all they can think of is getting more power. It's just power. Like, that's just because you see that with Savin.
It's not even just the power sometimes. Sometimes it's the prestige along with it. Now, this is getting a little bit more into breaking past the fourth wall a tiny bit, but the emblems. People will grunt, like the day one raid emblem. So many people, they don't even care about completing the raid for story part. They just want that emblem for day one.
Funny, which is so funny if you look at my character, because my emblem's from D1.
Right, and on Xbox, mine is always the lore one on my Xbox too. But like right now on PlayStation, I have the Heavy as Death emblem because I did the Iron Banner grind.
Yes,
she's scary.
Yeah, she is terrifying. I didn't even have to play against her. I just got to listen to her play for it. And I was like, oh God.
But it's like terrifying. It's not even. There's no gun. There's no gun tied to it. It was literally just the prestige and accomplishment of saying, "Hey, I am powerful because I went through and suffered through this essentially and accomplished it in that way." It's more of a badge of power rather than an actual mode of power.
See, that's where I
It's
would,
for
I
our-
would,
we-
I would disagree.
are-
I'm not
okay,
gonna.
Are we
I'm not.
arguing the definition, defining of my own power?
No,
Is
I
that-
am. I am going to argue that it is not actually power. It is power. It is just a different manifestation of that power, because prestige,
Okay.
in a way, is social power. It's
Mhm.
power. It's just not. It's,
intimidation.
exactly. It's not a military power like a gun. But
Mhm.
and this kind of ties back into I can't remember. I think it was the character episode that I mentioned, the dichotomies of the paradigms. That's actually a very akin to one of those, and that's the fear respect thing. Because in a fear respect society, or fear power society, sorry, it's never defined that power has to be physical. It's often very hierarchical in the sense of who controls the power, or who controls an element that is, determined to be a power source. Like, in a post-apocalyptic world, that's often seen in the presentation of who controls the food flow. That's the most powerful person. It doesn't matter who's actually quote unquote in power. It's who controls that. And so with the emblem standpoint, it's akin to, a military individual having the coat of arms, or the badge of honor, the badges that they wear, the rank insignias. It's not that they're not, it's not that it's not power. God, I hate double negatives. It's that it's a different flavor of that power.
The interesting thing is with that, though, is that it's only as powerful as as others assign it.
Yep. I mean, but that goes back into the concept of perception, right? I mean, in a way, you could say that's true about most physical power too.
Weapons essential? Like, weapons are pretty binary. You're either alive or dead.
I mean, only if you're playing on the same field. I mean, there's a lot of ways around weapons that you can. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's what's so fascinating about the Hive siblings, right? Is you have Oryx, who's kind of a good medium, but then you have Xivu, who just wants to bludgeon things, but then you have Savathun, who, I mean, I'm not saying that Savathun is weak. It's not that she's weak, but she doesn't use the physical blade. she uses her intellect.
She's a good delegator.
Right, but I mean, but that's what I mean is like and that's kind of the part of the cunning, is she forces them to play on her field. They are more powerful on their fields, so what they do is they make them come to their home turf where they are the strongest. And the same could be said for really anything, is if you can get someone into your home domain, yeah, you're gonna have a better standing than they are, even with, and I mean, you can see that even in Crucible Green, like even a Guardian who, I mean, you guys do this when you do 1 versus 1s or whatever.
Private matches and stuff
you
like
purposely, I mean, I've even seen people do this on stream where they'll purposely go into a Crucible match underpowered, or with a specific, like what was the Kovastov? That stupid
Kvostov, yes.
The before it became an exotic, when it was still just that green gun that was way back when. They would go in to prove that they could go up against No Man's Sky,
No Land Beyond.
Yeah, that one. God, I don't know why that got stuck as No Man's Sky. No Land Beyond.
I love how I'm still on the same wavelength as you, though.
Yeah, it's really scary. But what I mean is, like, that was where that gun kind of got its infamy. It was the point was, you are so powerful, you are so good that you don't need to have the pinnacle weapon to still win. So I mean, in that sense, I would argue that it's not a binary thing, because it's a matter of skill. It's a matter of map knowledge. Map knowledge for PvP. I still argue map knowledge is better than any mechanic weapon.
I mean, that was the whole point of the Heavy as Death emblem. Being and going in at
oh yeah, that's right, because you had to go in 100 below, right?
Well, you had to be in at least a tier below where where the people you were killing were red barred, essentially, for you. And so what ended up happening, at least the way that I managed to do it a little bit easier, is that not only would I dump my light level down the 100 points using the burden talisman, essentially, I would also put on a level 200 helmet. So that would
Right.
put me at 530 to people's 600 and 700. So I would be 180 points down or 170 points down from everybody.
Right, and
At the
yeah,
most.
you still got the emblem though.
Oh God! After like probably way more hours than my wife would love to admit,
and
I did.
And I mean, I'm not even gonna. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying anything about that.
Uh-huh.
What I'm saying is that my point there is that proves that just because you have a good gun doesn't mean that you're gonna win.
Right.
Because
Right.
there's so many different dynamics going into. I mean, that's true in reality as well. I mean, that's the basis of modern warfare. I would argue is just because you have better equipment doesn't mean you're going to necessarily win an engagement.
That's true.
No, but it does sure as heck.
It helps. It helps. I'm not going to argue. I am not saying it doesn't help. I'm just saying it's not a guarantee. It's not like you can. Yeah. I was. Yes, it helps immensely to have equipment that works. Yes, it does do that.
Mm-hmm. It does. Budget cuts.
Mhm.
Budget cuts.
And then you have people controlling the bullet
Right.
flow of everybody else, and it just makes it all messy.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's a reference to Wicked. He actually deals in bullets in the military.
You're a bullet dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Bullet farmer, technically.
Hmm.
That's the slang term they use for my MOS. We throw bullets in the ground and then we make new ones appear from nowhere. So they just say we plant them.
We should do
Oh,
shout-outs.
Alrighty.
Blue, do you want to start shout-out?
No.
Okay, Wicked, your turn.
Oh, no, I should turn that one on me. Let's see.
Welcome to the chat.
Right. I definitely want to give a shout out to Hydra. Our clan has definitely brought me together with some amazing people, Green obviously included, and because of those people, introduced me to some amazing people as well. The chat definitely for egging me on and providing me with some nice, wonderful, warmsy hugs before the show. And then I actually had it pulled up earlier, but I'm having a brain fart on it right now. I can't remember the freaking name. The Guardian group the group of Guardians that work with Guardian Con as far as providing for the mentally
the Guardian Project.
mental challenges.
Yeah, Guardian Project used
Which
to be
used to be
called
Saint 14 Project.
Saint 14 Project. Yep.
Yeah.
I have one of their OG pins. I love that icon that they had.
I'm part of their Discord, and they've just been seeing some of the wonderful things they've been doing for people has just been absolutely amazing, and seeing their successes and seeing their videos as far as just talking through people's problems. It does a really good job of just trying to help people get back on the right track. And I know specifically in the social media realm, there's a lot of negative feelings, and there's a lot of kind of a need to refocus and to re-energize yourself with good feelings. And they definitely do a good job of helping you to recenter yourself. So I definitely want to give a shout out to them.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Blue, are you ready next, or do you want me to go?
You can go. I don't really have any this week, so.
Okay. My shout out goes to the various streams that are raising money. We're into the final month before Guardian Con, and streams, charity streams are really kind of gearing up in full swing now. The marathon streams are going on. Mixer has its own group of streamers doing it. I know that Lady Desiree, a friend of the show, is part of that. Be sure to hop in and be in chat if you can. If you can donate, awesome. If you can't donate, can't be in chat, spread the word. Help build up just kind of the hype around this and building us up to be able to help these kids out with St. Jude. I know that a few different guardians that I have personally met have been impacted from St. Jude itself on a very personal level, and that it really does help. Every little dollar helps. And last year they raised a ton of money. This year, if we can bust that and just make history once again, that would be amazing.
Yeah,
and so
they have
keep your eyes peeled for it.
They have progressively beaten each year they make.
They have
huge strides. And yeah,
Yes.
I would double down on that. St. Jude's is one of the few things that it's really one of those it's one of those organizations that, regardless of, you know, political, religious, whatever opinions you have, they actually do back up what they actually do what they say they're going to do.
Right.
They're an amazing organization. And I think that is actually what makes me completely okay with doing, pretty much supporting everything they do, is because they actually do not, if you're an individual who has to go there, you know, they do actually completely not charge you. And I think that in today's world I don't think that can be praised high enough.
It's very rare.
It's very rare, and it's also, I can't give enough credit to that organization for that feature alone. Not notwithstanding the other stuff that they do that's amazing, but that feature alone to me is just, yeah.
So my sister actually used to work for a hospital in Wichita that would do the same thing. And that hospital got bought out and is now privatized and does not give away as much services as it used to. So the fact that St. Jude still manages to do it on such a grand scale is an incredible, amazing feat that they're able to manage it. And it's only because of the contributions from various people, large and small.
Yeah, I was about to say, and that's a testament almost as much to the organization as it is to the people supporting it. Because
yes, it is.
It's, I mean, you are 100. I think you're 100% correct. Is the only reason that they're able to do it is because people keep helping. And I think to anything else, you know, that kind of ties into, you know, Wicked, what you were saying with like the whole social media environment, you know, being what it is. It's like, yeah, you have the darkness that is sometimes social media, but then, you know, you look up and you see that, and it's like, you know, I find it hard I find it hard not to have some faith restored because of what you see with that. Okay, which, even in the darkness, there is light. But yeah, so.
Hey, it's like I have a tattoo about that.
Look, Ulan-Tan. I'm gonna get smacked so bad with.
Yeah, you are.
So see you guys. Yeah, no, she has like one of the little clicker counter. Book. She has a clicker counter. It's like tick 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 tick.
It's either at a certain level, it's just sick Anna on you.
No, that's even more terrifying. But yeah, so we'll see you guys next week. And yeah, hope you guys are having a great week, and hope you guys will have a great week next week.
Bye.
All right, bye, guys.
With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/focusedfirechat. Links to all our episode archives can also be found at www.focusedfirechat.com. Please be sure to email us at focusedfirechat@gmail.com with any comments or questions for our team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. Also, be sure to check out all the amazing work being featured over on thelorenetwork.com. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.